Now, video games are more popular and lucrative than they've ever been right now, but of course, it's not simply possible for every game, no matter how anticipated they might be, to be a banger home run. Unfortunately, some games are destined, well, to hit the bargain bin very quickly. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 upcoming video games that will probably die at launch. And just remember, this is firmly tongue-in-cheek. If these games go on to be absolute megastars, then I don't mind being wrong, but if I'm right, well, you're welcome. So let's kick things off with number 10, Skull and Bones. Can you think of a more obviously dead-on-arrival upcoming game than Ubisoft's Skull and Bones? Well, this swashbuckling action-adventure game was revealed all the way back at E3 2017 and had a planned 2018 release. Yet, with its release date being continually pushed back, it quickly became clear that development wasn't exactly going well. By September 2020, Ubisoft revealed that a new vision for this game had emerged, requiring more development time, effectively confirming reports that Skull and Bones had been quasi-rebooted and moving away from a traditional AAA open-world campaign into a live service title with a world that changes over time. One source said that Ubisoft's new direction was heavily inspired by the live storytelling elements of Fortnite, and if anything ever signals a game that is destined for failure, it's listlessly trying to cash in on the glories of an existing hit release. Between this, the game's continued strained development, and the general feeling that Ubisoft has oversaturated itself with live service games, it's difficult to have faith in the end product being anything less than a dud that eventually is just sent out into the world just so that Ubisoft can finally be rid of it. If this somehow isn't a total flop on launch, well, there's going to be a ton of crow for most players to eat. Number 9, Fairgames. It's never a good sign when a new game with some serious heavyweight talent behind it fails to drum up much immediate hype, and that was precisely what happened with the recent reveal for Fairgames. The live service shooter produced by new outfit Haven Studios, which is headed up by Assassin's Creed co-creator Jade Raymond, was unveiled with a slick cinematic trailer at Sony's latest PlayStation showcase and, well, barely registered a blip on social media. It didn't help that the CGI trailer showed off not a single frame of actual gameplay, and its bright, saturated, neon-heavy aesthetic simply felt like a craven attempt to cash in on the success of the likes of Fortnite. Furthermore, there are a number of similarly themed live service heist shooters in the works right now, namely Hyenas and The Finals, ensuring that Fairgames, with its lack of released gameplay footage, feels a little too late to the party. With there being so little interest in the game already, it seems destined to flop on launch and quickly be forgotten in the ether of generic live service slop. It would be great to be wrong though, and I hope that Haven Studios actually does well. Number 8, EXO Primal. Now, because Capcom is apparently averse to just giving the people what they want and making a new Dino Crisis game, we've been instead blessed, with air quotes around that, with the third-person multiplayer dino shooter EXO Primal. Now, I have played this and I really enjoyed it, but if I'm being honest, the future of this game is still very much in question. And that's because this PvPvE squad-based shooter could be a right laugh if it were free to play. Except EXO Primal is a full-fat retail release, and though Xbox Game Pass subscribers can play it for air quotes free on launch, everybody else will need to fork out a hefty AAA price tag to play it. And if that's not a major threat to a game's potential to build a community and survive long-term, what is? While EXO Primal might cling to life in its early days due to the Game Pass effect, you could expect it to flop on PS4 and PS5 because nothing we've seen from the game so far suggests that it is worth a £50 asking price, especially when there are other games doing effectively the same that are doing it for free. Number 7, The Crew Motorfest. The Crew, Ubisoft's racing franchise which just keeps on coming back, no matter the utterly indifferent critical and player response to the first two entries in the series. The third game, The Crew Motorfest, was unveiled earlier this year, and like its predecessor will operate under the live service model, with the publisher continually updating the game with new content after release. Except the reveal trailer was met with a resounding shrug from all but the most ride-or-die Crew fans, with many noting how aggressively the new game appeared to be co-opting the aesthetic and gameplay style of the considerably more successful Forza Horizon 5. Even though Forza Horizon is exclusive to the Xbox PC ecosystem, it nevertheless remains the king of the online live service racing games, and players in droves couldn't help but negatively compare the Crew Motorfest to this, even nicknaming it Forza Ubisoft, or more cheekily, Horizon at Home. When you additionally consider the other racing games taking up players' precious time this year, Need for Speed Unbound and the soon-to-be-released Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, it's tough to believe that there's going to be enough oxygen in the room for the Crew to survive. Number 6, Multiverses. Nobody could blame you for assuming that Multiverses, a Warner Brothers themed Smash Brothers clone, had already been released, given that the game entered open beta last summer and stayed open for almost an entire year, shutting down fairly recently. Many players understandably believed that Multiverses had simply quietly transitioned from open beta into full release mode, given its free-to-play model and how polished the game was during open beta. But back in March, Warner Brothers revealed that the beta period was ending and the full game wouldn't be releasing until 2024, an announcement which rubbed many players the wrong way, while analysts began to question the logic of this business decision. For starters, the game's player count rapidly dwindled in the months following the beta's launch, and secondly, players decried that no refunds would be offered for the premium content purchased during the open beta that is now unusable until the game's proper launch. All in all, it felt like an odd decision to close up shop when interest in the game is clearly already petering out, and with most players having evidently had their fill of Multiverses during the beta, it's tough to picture many of them returning for the legit rollout. Plus, with Warner Brothers' no refund policy burning much player goodwill before the game is even officially out, its primary revenue stream will almost certainly be harmed. As fun as the game actually was to play during the beta, people have already moved on to other things, and it'll take something truly special in order to win them back. Number 5. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game. Fans of cult 80s horror films were left positively flabbergasted when an asymmetrical multiplayer game based on the classic sci-fi horror comedy Killer Clowns from Outer Space was announced. Following in the footsteps of similar titles based on the Friday the 13th and Evil Dead franchises, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, will allow players to control either the murderous clowns or hapless citizens fighting for their lives. The game's announcement was nothing if not unexpected, given that Killer Clowns from Outer Space simply isn't a genre household name, and despite its 1988 movie's box office success, not even a single sequel has ever materialized. As such, it isn't an IP that's remained in the public consciousness over the last 35 years, and so it's easy to question whether or not it'll actually manage to capture a committed fanbase like the aforementioned multiplayer horror games. And with the market getting even more crowded with a Texas Chainsaw Massacre multiplayer game that is due to release later this year, it's easy to see how this more niche offering could end up lost in the shuffle. That's certainly no indication of the game's prospective quality, just simply that it may struggle to break out amongst higher profile genre competition. Then again, if it became a hit with streamers and the general public embraces its loony premise on its own terms, it could very well become a surprise success. If you were to bet on this fate though, you'd certainly have it pegged as a flop, sadly. Number 4. Foam Stars. Much like Fairgames, Foam Stars was unveiled during Sony's recent PlayStation showcase, and though it at least had the good sense to show off some actual gameplay footage, folks just couldn't stop comparing it to both Fortnite and especially Splatoon. The Splatoon at home jokes quickly wrote themselves, and the entire reveal had a serious aura of desperation around it, that Square Enix was transparently attempting to cash in on 2 of the most successful and popular multiplayer games of recent years. But here's the thing though, recent press interviews during the Summer Games Fest were actually generally positive, encouraging players to put aside their preconceptions about Foam Stars and approach it with an open mind. Yet there's ultimately one factor which will likely decide Foam Stars' fate. How much will it cost? Well, Square Enix has kept mum on the specifics so far, but it certainly feels like a game that only has a chance of surviving amid the sea of live service party shooters if it is either free to play or comes with a budget price tag. If the publisher dares charge a full AAA RRP for this thing, say 50 to 60 quid, it's going to be dead in the water before it's even launched. But given that Square Enix demanded a hefty sum for the live service train wreck Babylon's Fall barely a year ago, you're better off keeping your expectations in check. Number 3. Disney Speedstorm. Name a more iconic duo than publisher Gameloft and shameless cash grabs. You might have assumed that their free-to-play kart racer Disney Speedstorm had already been released, given that it's in a current period of paid early access ahead of its full-fat free-to-play release in September. And while it's a reasonable expectation that early access titles are a little rough around the edges and iterated upon for launch proper, given the utter indifference with which the early access release has been received, it's tough to imagine many sticking around for the official rollout. Now, a shameless Mario Kart clone starring a host of beloved Disney characters could have actually been a ton of fun, right? Except while critics largely praised the central racing mechanics, the game's lack of content, grindy progression, and overabundance of currencies and pay-to-win microtransactions have near been universally derided. Combine the lukewarm at best early response with the fact that there's hardly anyone playing it barely 2 months after it entered early access, and even the free-to-play allure likely won't move the needle much at all when the final game launches. Number 2. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Just show the reactions on the trailer when this dropped. I mean, no. Prove me wrong. And number 1, Everwild. Rare's new game Everwild was first announced in late 2019, and though early reports indicated it would be a third-person adventure title with god game elements, industry insider Jeff Grubb claimed in 2021 that it had been rebooted into something quite different following the departure of the creative director. VGC's Andy Robinson, meanwhile, indicated that it had been reworked from a survival game into a Viva Pinata-esque simulation title. Whatever the new direction truly ends up being, trademarks filed for the game indicate that it will have a live service service element of some kind, and given Rare's ongoing success with their live service pirate game Sea of Thieves, that's not terribly surprising. All the same, considering the love for Rare's more focused, curated projects, the inclusion of live service mechanics may well deter many. The fact that it's launching day and date on Xbox Game Pass will certainly give it a leg up, but it's still easy to believe that this one will come and go without making much of a dent. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 upcoming video games that will probably die at launch. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram and Twitter, where it's at RetroJ, but the O is a 0, or you can swing by the Future Game Show, or FGS, where I do all of my gaming content going forward. Big love to you all. Hope you're treating yourself well, and I'll catch you soon. Bye.